Hello everyone, I'm Wendell Jones, and we hope you had a good Christmas, and welcome to another edition of the program, The Platform. On this program, we examine the national issues of the Bahamas, and we invite you to listen in and watch us if you can. We've had many incidents over the last several days, and in fact, we can report that the homicide rate for 2014 has gone beyond the rate of 2013. And we, at this moment, we are talking about 121 persons who have been murdered or who are the victims of homicide over the last 12 months. And so in our program today, we're going to be talking about some of the problems in our societies. Some have to do with violence and other social development challenges that we have in our country today. Two young men are here, and they are working with the church and in the communities in New Providence. DJ Counsellor, a youth minister at Salem Baptist Church, and Reverend Deno Cartwright, who is a youth minister at New Bethany Baptist Church, Key West Street. They are our guests on the program. Welcome, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you here today.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
DJ Counsellor, you've been here many times, so you know the rhythm, eh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Cartwright, how long have you been a minister?
I've been in ministry since 2004. So
2004?
10 years. Yes, sir.
Okay, 10
Yes,
years.
10 years.
And how do you find it?
Ministry has its challenges, but at the same time it's exciting for me because when challenges come, then you are able to try to find new ways to meet those challenges. So, and always working in the youth ministry, it's, I believe, one of the hardest jobs because though the message is the same, you have to change your methodology based on the generation to meet their needs. And so it's a challenging job, but I've been having fun along the way.
It's a full-time job for you?
No, sir, not a full-time job.
What do you do as a full-time job?
I work as an examiner at the Central Bank.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Very
full-time.
good. Okay.
Right.
And DJ Counsellor, you have been in youth ministry for as long as I know you, which is a long time.
Yes, sir.
All right. How long have you been in youth ministry?
From 2002.
From 2002?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Are you making
Full-time youth ministry. Yeah.
Full-time?
Yes, sir.
And you're still full-time?
Yes, sir.
Are you making any progress, you think?
Yeah, we are making progress, but you know, there's an element that we have been ignoring that I've now seen how serious it is, and we cannot, you know, continue to ignore this issue. We're trying to address a problem when it is a problem and not at its foundation. That they had an opportunity to speak at an organization that had about 36 females graduating from all of them are under the age of 16, pregnant. And so that's just a few caught out of hundreds every year that we have in our country where you have our minors are having kids. And again, it's that family structure that's not properly being addressed. Some of the schools, I mean, now we have grade 3s coming to school high. You know, what's the future of a young man coming to school high in grade 3 right now, realistically? And so we are a country that's sinking quickly. The church is, in most cases, clueless of what to do. We're selling miracles here. And this, you know, it's just so much things that, and it's not a hard thing to address, you know. It just need folks who care, and we don't have we don't have enough folks in these communities that care, and that's what the problem is.
Is it as simple as that?
As simple as that, sir. Very simple. Love? Oh my God. I go to school sometimes. I have to be careful what I wear because I leave dirty. Because the kids don't even get hugs from home. They don't hear the word, I love you. We have an angry generation. And right now, you could go into some of our inner cities and the primary schools, and you could see what type of high schools we're going to be having within the next 6 years with these kids. It's crazy. We have gangs right now. I talk about organized gangs in our primary school. Things that the Ministry of Education would even release to the public.
So, you have homes that are failing. Then you have youth groups that are failing too. Youth ministers are failing too, right, Mr. Cartwright? I said to a young pastor the other day that I believe that the church need dynamic ministries and we don't see the dynamism in ministries to make these youth groups compelling to the thousands of young men and women who ought to be a part of these youth groups. How do you respond?
What I find, there are instances where I do agree in terms of youth ministry, because even when you look at the church's budget, youth ministry, I can't speak for anybody else, but youth ministry is normally at the bottom of the totem pole. But that's also reflective in government, in their spending, especially with, they have a high national security budget when compared to Ministry of Youth budget. You can see exactly where the focus is. And even the Bible tells us where man's money is, essentially that's where his heart is, where man's treasure is. And so what I find too is that we have to be able and willing to change with the times. Like I said earlier, while the message remains the same, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, forevermore, the methodology must change. And we often say too that extensive ministry is expensive ministry. But when you find the people who care, you would find that they would then pump money into this aspect of ministry that is sorely needed. Youth, when you say youth ministers fail, I would have youth ministries in terms of reaching this community. I would venture to say so, because I've been in youth ministry long enough, and I sit now as National Baptist Youth Director. And I would venture to say that a lot, if not the majority of our youth ministries are non-existent. Because churches are not spending the time dealing with what they call the nursery bed of the church or the community, which is youth ministry. And so I would agree with you that they are not giving that focus that they need to. And a number of youth ministries are non-existent. You go to a church on a Friday night when you would expect to have youth ministry, 2-3 young people out there. But you go to clubs and they are packed, because the clubs are now drawing them in, appealing to what I call to this sight and sound generation. That's who we are. We know the Bible is still there, but you have to be able to present it in such a way that it attracts them.
And DJ Counsellor, you've been there from 2002. And so let us talk about how in 2015 you can change that. Shouldn't there be a movement? Shouldn't there be a groundswell to attract young people into the church, and not necessarily in terms of just going to church, but being people who are there working to bring others to Christ?
Let me say something. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. Getting folks from your community to come to your church, it's not always an issue, you know. The problem is we have too much issues in the church that causes folks who don't want to ever come back again. And that's our immaturity as a body is what's killing us. And that's why real ministry can't happen. We're bringing folks to the so-called hospital, but we have worse issues than out there in the community.
What are these issues you're talking about?
Just simple stuff of lack of communication, forgiveness. I mean, in some of our churches, it is toxic. And you're trying to get a killer to put his gun down, to come to our Jesus, but be toxic. You have to be mad. And let's piggyback on what Minister said here. We're dealing with a sight and sound generation. Right now, it's not difficult. Like I say, right now, a move can happen for our young folks to be involved in ministry or come to church, but it may not be in the settings that we have approved to be called church. And that's what will become very scary to many of our leaders. When we say we operate in the church, but have no real true direction, or not having individuals involved who understand ministry or your vision, it works against what you're supposed to be doing at the end of the day. And so we have so many things just working against ministry that is causing us not to be effective as we should in the community. Folks are supposed to be able to, as a Christian believer, folks are supposed to look at you and see a difference. Our lifestyle alone is supposed to be an attraction. But it's not. Take away the shouting and the lovely things that we do, and it depends on where you worship, you do this a little differently. Take away all of that. Let's talk about the man. And that's what's non-existent. We don't have any saltiness right now. And that's the church on the whole.
How do you get the saltiness? How do you get the saltiness, Mr. Cartwright?
When you say I just need a clarification. When you say salt,
Well, he's
you're
talking about
the impact.
you're supposed to be the salt of the earth. I
Right,
suppose.
right. The salt of the earth, the light of the world.
Mm-hmm.
The way that the only way that a salt can essentially, you can tell the saltiness is that it has to be willing to be put on the meat. So you have to become involved. We've become polarized in that we have secluded church to 4 walls, chandeliers, a shout, a dance, an offering, and then we go home. I find too that in a number of our communities, a large majority of the people in that church don't live in that community.
Right.
And so you would find that the church of that community is not really, the saltiness of that church is not felt because they are not touching their Jerusalem. Jesus told the disciples, come minister in Jerusalem first, then go to the outermost parts of the world. But we lose our saltiness because we want to stay in the salt shaker. You can't essentially season the meat until you take the time to be shaken out. And a lot of times, too, that we have built this thing about church. What people don't see, and I think the reason why we are not touching our young people is that we're not letting them know that it's okay to be human and still saved. We kind of build up this aura about us, or we should be walking around in halos all the time. I'm a preacher, preaching from 17, messed up a whole lot of times. But we aren't willing to share that story. No. And what I try to tell people is that if you tell persons that you were once a drunkard and you are now saved, then they have hope that they too who are in this drunken position can come out. Mm-hmm. We lose our impact because we are not willing to be down to earth and real with our generation. We are losing our generation because they don't have that connection with who this Jesus Christ himself hung out with the wine bibber, so much so that they thought that he was a wine bibber. Jesus hung out, he had Mary Magdalene around him who was a prostitute, and he was a preacher. And so Jesus Christ rebuked those Sadducees and Pharisees, the church folk, because they were not willing to get down in. Because how can you effectively change a people if you're not willing to get down? How can you just want to treat a cancer without actually going in and taking it out?
I'm happy you mentioned that, because from time to time I have theologians on this program, and I ask them about the relevance of the church to a whole lot of young people. The church itself as an institution created by Christ cannot fail. We know that.
Right, correct.
Upon this rock I build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So the church cannot fail. But the church to a whole lot of young people can be irrelevant.
Yeah,
correct.
And so let's talk about the relevancy of the church in today's Bahamas. 121 homicides. You talked about the teen pregnancies, and you know of the social decay that we have. Don't all of these things speak to the irrelevancy of the church to the majority of our youth?
Yeah. In somewhat. Again, like we spoke about it off air. We still go back to the homes. You know, the institution that God designed. That's where we get our identity from. That's where we get our character from. But when that is being removed to the point now that it is almost non-existent, this is what we have. When someone goes out there and have a child out of wedlock consistently, we call that a blessing. We have a blessing. Look, we have in this world. We have a child. Wow.
Well, it's not a curse.
Well,
It's not a curse. I knew.
Well, a child that is not being parented is not a blessing that nations are.
No, but the woman's womb was blessed by God to bear a child.
Well, you bear a child. Now what?
And the child is created in the image and likeness of God.
Yes, sir.
So the child cannot be a curse.
Okay.
Right?
But an unparented child is what?
Now, Now,
It ca-
an unparented child.
How does an unparented
But
child?
an unparented child cannot be a curse to the society.
I never said it's a curse to society.
Correct.
But it surely isn't showing that it's a blessing.
You are misusing the blessing that you have been given, or you are ill-treating the blessing that you have been
There you
given.
go.
Yes?
There you go.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
correct.
Yes, sir.
Because I would agree in that the child itself, even though the means for which it may not have been the appropriate according to biblical knowledge,
Right.
when that child comes, that child can be a blessing. If given the right resources, put in the right environment,
Right.
they can. And the church itself, back to your question, what you were saying, the church itself, society's issues are not necessarily going to stop at the doorsteps of the church. The church plays a role, but the home plays a role, the school plays a role, even leaders who are in leadership positions in society play a role, because when you are visible, you are expected to walk with a certain caliber of character that people can follow you. So the church has its part to play, but the church itself is not the sole issue why the nation is in the problems that it's in. The nation is in situations that it's in because of, one, lawlessness, because they themselves, as we also said off air, because we ourselves don't put ourselves to a certain law. We are now seeing the effects of lawlessness, or persons who have a disregard for the law, and even a disregard for who God is. And I find too that what we need even now is to bring back that fear of God back in society. The fear of God, not just that trembling fear of who God is, but that utter respect and reverence for God and the commandments that He gave. And so that's where the church itself ought to be preaching the word in season, out of season. An issue that I have, and I think the church is really having an issue with this. Now, we've got a lot of churches now speaking this prosperity theology, which is that they often say that, but they often talk about the blessings of God being translated into your car, your house, and all of that. But even the Bible tells us to woe to those prophets who speak about peace when evil or calamity is on its way. And so the church's responsibility now is to speak truth to power. But I believe that may soon be almost taken away from us, because we've got a number of persons in the church who have now sold out to power. And so they can't really correct that which they have corrupted, or they can't really speak truth to somebody when I have my hand in their back pocket.
Yeah.
But the church is just not just one person.
Correct.
The church is not just the pastor or the priest. The church is the body of believers. Those people who are in the pews, who go there every week or several times within the week. They are the people who are required to go out and be witnesses and to live lives that others can see Christ living in them.
But are they being taught that, Mr. Jones?
But I make that point because sometimes we seem to get the church a little confused with church leadership.
Correct.
And church leadership is not the church. There is one person who is elected or selected to be the leader of the church, but the church is made up of a body of believers.
Yes, sir.
So the church in general, we're talking about thousands of people who are not witnessing as they ought. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yes, you're right. I don't think for the most part many of us know how to be a witness. What he just mentioned is now about this prosperity blessing. That's not just one church, That's not just a few dozen, sir. We're not getting, most of our churches are not getting that authentic, unadulterated word. As simple as the teachings of Christ itself. Being your brother's keeper. Learn to forgive. Simple stuff. How can I love you and I cause so much I talk about quarrels and spreading your name, but I'm speaking in tongues. Where's our fruit as a people? If our pastors, leaders, were to sit down and literally sit down and judge, look at my congregation, what is the problem, and I'm the leader. some of that has to spill on the leadership side.
Let's take a break here. And when we return, we're going to talk about real Christianity, what it is, and what it's not. Let's take this break here on the platform. 2015 is here, and we're talking with two youth leaders in our country. We'll come right back.